The alarms screamed through the corridors of the Eternal Dominion. Red lights flashed against metal walls as soldiers from a dozen different species ran to their battle stations. Jiwan pressed herself against the wall to let a squad of tall, blue-skinned Kelrath warriors pass. Their faces showed no emotion. They moved like machines, precise and cold. She envied that sometimes. The ability to just follow orders without thinking, without feeling. "Move it, engineer," someone shouted behind her. Jiwan hurried toward the human section of the massive warship. The floor vibrated under her feet. Somewhere far above, the ship's main guns were firing at the swarm. She had seen the swarm once, through a viewport. Black ships that looked like insects, moving in perfect coordination. They consumed everything. Planets, ships, people. The human barracks was chaos. 3,000 humans had joined the Andromeda Coalition 6 months ago. Earth had been desperate. The swarm was coming, and humanity needed allies. The coalition needed soldiers. It was a simple trade. Dae-hyun stood in the center of the main hall, reading something on his datapad. His face was tight with worry. He had been a teacher back on Earth. Before the war, now he wore the uniform of a squad leader, though he still had the gentle eyes of someone who cared too much. "What's happening?" Jiwan asked, jogging up to him. "Transport 7 just launched," Dae-hyun said quietly. "All senior officers, heading to the command carrier for a strategy meeting." Jiwan nodded. That was normal. The human commanders often met with the coalition leadership. General Vothkar, the reptilian officer who commanded this sector, liked to keep everyone informed, or at least, he liked to give orders and make sure everyone understood their place. Mireille appeared from the medical bay, wiping her hands on her uniform. She had paint under her fingernails. Always. Even in a war zone, she found time to draw. "Is it bad out there?" "Thank," she asked. "Don't know yet," Dae-hyun said. "We're on standby." That was the worst part. Waiting. Jiwan had been a construction engineer before the war. She liked building things, solving problems with her hands. The military made her wait. Wait for orders. Wait for permission. Wait to be useful. The explosion came without warning. One moment, Jiwan was standing in the barracks. The next, she was on the floor. The lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in sick yellow light. Screams filled the air. And in Cotter, the sang too, not human screams. The ship itself, groaning from some terrible wound. What was that? Mireille gasped, pulling herself up. Dae-hyun was already at a terminal. His fingers flying across the screen. His face went pale. "Oh no. 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 No." "What?" Jiwan demanded. "Transport 7. The words didn't make sense at first. Gone. How could a transport be gone? It had just left. "The swarm got through our fighters," Dae-hyun whispered. "Direct hit. No survivors." The barracks went silent. Someone in the back started crying. Jiwan felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. All the officers. Every single human commander. Colonel Park, Major Kim, Captain Lee, all of them, gone in a flash of light and metal. "What do we do?" someone asked. The voice sounded young, scared. Dae-hyun looked around at the 3,000 faces staring at him. He wasn't the highest-ranking soldier left. He was a squad leader. Nothing more. But everyone was looking at him anyway, waiting for an answer he didn't have. On the command deck of the Eternal Dominion, General Vothkar watched the same data Dae-hyun had seen. His scaled hand clenched around the armrest of his chair. The human transport was debris now. Unfortunate, but acceptable losses. The battle was going poorly. The swarm had more ships than expected. "Should we assign new commanders to the human contingent?" his aide asked. Vothkar considered this. The humans were problematic. They questioned orders. They showed emotions during battle. They formed attachments to each other that clouded their judgment. Every other species in the coalition had learned to suppress such weakness. The Kelrath were bred for obedience. The Torvath followed tradition, absolutely. Even the Minari, for all their small size, understood hierarchy. But humans argued. They debated. They needed everything explained, as if orders weren't enough. No, Vothkar said finally. Let them wait. I will assign new leadership after the battle. If they survive. He didn't say the rest of what he was thinking. Without commanders, the humans would likely fall apart. They would panic. They would need someone to tell them what to do, and no one would be there. It would be a useful lesson. Perhaps the survivors would learn discipline. In the barracks, Jiwon watched Daehyun struggle with what to say. She had known him for 4 months now. They had trained together, fought in simulations together, shared terrible food in the mess hall together. He was kind. Too kind for war. But he was also smart. We can't just sit here, Jiwon said. The ship is damaged. We're engineers. Mechanics. Medics. We can help. We don't have orders, a soldier named Kwan said. He was older. Former military even before joining the coalition. We wait for the chain of command to be re-established. The chain of command is floating in space, another voice shouted. The barracks erupted in arguments. Some wanted to wait. Others wanted to act. It was exactly what the other species said about humans. They couldn't agree. They couldn't function without someone in charge. Daehyun held up his hands. Everyone, listen. Just listen for a moment. The noise died down slowly. You're right, Daehyun said to Kwan. We should wait for orders. That's proper military procedure. He paused. But we're also right. He nodded to Jiwon. That we can help. We have skills. The ship is damaged. People are hurt. So, what do we do? Mirai asked. Daehyun looked at her, then at Jiwon, then at the crowd of confused, scared, angry humans. We do what we've always done. We figure it out ourselves. That's not how the military works, Kwan protested. Maybe it's how the human military works, Jiwon said quietly. She stood up straighter. Back on Earth, when buildings collapsed, did construction crews wait for orders? Or did they start digging? When someone is hurt, Mirai added, do doctors wait for permission to help? Daehyun nodded slowly. We're humans. We don't need someone to tell us what's right. We already know. It wasn't a rousing speech. It wasn't a formal order. It was just the truth, spoken plainly. And somehow, that was enough. Jiwon found herself moving toward the door. I'm going to engineering. The ship has damage. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to the medical bay, Mirai said. Others started standing. Moving. Not because they were ordered to, but because it made sense. Because it was the right thing to do. Daehyun watched them go. A small smile on his tired face. Then he turned to the tactical station. Someone needed to coordinate. Someone needed to gather information and share it. No one had told him to do it. He did it anyway. High above, in his command chair, General Vothkar noticed a strange thing. The human section of the ship was showing activity. Engineering teams moving. Medical personnel deploying. All without orders. All without a command structure. What are they doing? He muttered. His aide checked the monitors. It appears they are self-organizing, General. 8. Vothkar's eyes narrowed. That wasn't possible. Soldiers without commanders were supposed to be helpless. Every species in the coalition knew this. It was a fundamental truth of military science. Yet the humans were moving, working, helping, like they were broken. Or like they had never needed commanders in the first place. Vothkar didn't know which possibility disturbed him more. 3 days had passed since the transport explosion. 3 days without any new commanders assigned to the human contingent. Jiwon stood in Engineering Bay 7, elbow deep in a fighter's damaged propulsion system. Around her, 6 other humans worked on different ships, salvaging parts from hopeless wrecks to repair the ones that could still fly. Nobody had told them to do this. Nobody had given them permission. They did it anyway. "Hand me that plasma coupling," Ji-won said to Hyunwoo. The man had been a chef on Earth. Now he spent his days crawling through damaged machinery, learning as he went. He passed her the tool without question. "This one's almost ready," called out Salmon from under another fighter. "Maybe 2 more hours," Ji-won smiled. When they started, none of them except her had known anything about spacecraft repair. Now they worked together like they had been doing it for years. They taught each other. They shared knowledge freely. When someone made a mistake, others helped fix it, instead of assigning blame. It was strange. Efficient, but strange. In another part of the ship, Dae-hyun sat in what used to be the human tactical center. Screens surrounded him, showing ship positions, enemy movements, resource allocations. Beside him sat 5 other soldiers, each monitoring different aspects of the war. "Swarm scouts detected in Sector 14, reported Junho, a former police officer. "Should we report it?" asked Nari, who had been a student before the war. "Already did," Dae-hyun said, forwarding the information to the coalition command. "But we should also figure out what they're doing there. Look at the pattern." They looked. They discussed. They argued. Even. Voices got raised. But in the end, they found an answer together. The swarm was probing for weaknesses. There was a gap in the coalition's defense grid. Dae-hyun sent that analysis up the chain too. He wondered if anyone was reading it. The coalition officers barely acknowledged human communications. They gave orders, not conversations. In the medical section, Mireille organized triage stations with a quiet confidence she didn't feel. Wounded soldiers from the last battle filled the beds. Not just humans. Kelrath warriors with their blue skin turned purple from injuries. Small Minari with broken limbs. Even a Torvath. Their thick armor cracked and bleeding. "The Kelrath doesn't want human help," said Unji, another medic. Mireille looked at the proud alien soldier, who stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge the humans. "Did he say that?" "No, but you can see it in his eyes." "Then we help him anyway," Mireille said simply. Pain doesn't care about pride. She moved to the Kelrath's bedside and began treating his wounds. He didn't thank her. Didn't even look at her. But he also didn't refuse the help. That was enough. General Vothkar reviewed the daily reports in his private quarters. The battle had moved to a temporary stalemate. The swarm was regrouping. So was the coalition. It gave him time to address the human problem. Except it wasn't a problem anymore. That was the strange part. He pulled up the efficiency reports. Human engineering teams had repaired 47 fighters in 3 days. The previous week, with their full command structure intact, they had repaired 31. Medical response time was down by 18%. Tactical analysis reports were arriving twice as frequently, and they were good. Better than good. They showed creative thinking, alternative perspectives. "This doesn't make sense," Vothkar muttered. His aide, a Kelrath named Tresh, stood nearby. "Sir, the humans, they have no leaders, no formal chain of command. They should be inefficient, disorganized. Perhaps they are simply continuing their previous training, sir." Vothkar shook his head. "No. They're doing more. Working harder. And they're doing it without orders." He pulled up communication logs. "Look at this. They talk to each other constantly. Arguing, debating, questioning. Sounds chaotic, sir. It should be. But somehow they reach consensus. They make decisions. Together." Tresh looked uncomfortable. In Kelrath culture, decisions came from above. The chain of command was sacred. The idea of soldiers debating strategy was disturbing. "Should I assign them new commanders?" Tresh asked. Vothkar considered this for a long moment. "Not yet. I want to watch them longer. This is unusual." In the human barracks that evening, Ji-won sat with Dae-hyun and Mireille, in what had become their unofficial planning area. Others joined them. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to be part of the discussion. "We need to organize better," said Quan, the older soldier who had wanted to wait for orders days ago. "We're doing good work, but we're scattered." "What do you suggest?" Daehyun asked. "Rotating leadership. Each team picks a coordinator for the week. They report to a central group. That group makes decisions together." "That's just recreating the command structure," Junho pointed out. "No," Jiwon said slowly. "It's different. We're not taking orders. We're sharing information and making decisions together. Everyone has a voice." "That takes too long," someone argued. "Does it?" Mireille asked. "We've been doing it for 3 days. Are we slower than before?" Silence. They all knew the answer. "We're faster," Hyunwoo said. "Because we don't wait for permission. We see a problem, we fix it." Daehyun nodded. "On Earth, humans have always worked like this when it mattered. Natural disasters, emergencies. When the situation is desperate, we don't wait for someone to tell us to help. We just help." "The coalition doesn't understand that," Nari said. "I've talked to some of the Minari soldiers. They're confused by us. They think we're undisciplined." "Maybe we are," Jiwon admitted. "But maybe discipline isn't the only way to win a war." The discussion continued for another hour. They talked about how to improve coordination, how to share resources better, how to make sure everyone's voice was heard without drowning in endless debate. It was messy, it was complicated, it was very human. The next morning, Vothkar decided to see the humans in person. He entered Engineering Bay 7 without announcement. The humans looked up briefly, then went back to work. On his homeworld, soldiers would have snapped to attention. They would have stopped everything until dismissed. These humans barely acknowledged him. "You," Vothkar said, pointing at Jiwon. Jiwon looked up from her work. "Repairing this fighter's power distribution system, sir. It took damage in the last battle." "Who ordered you to do this?" "Nobody, sir. It needed to be done." Vothkar's scales rippled with confusion. "You need orders to work." "Do I?" Jiwon asked. Not rudely, but genuinely curious. "I'm an engineer. There's a broken ship. I fix it. That's what engineers do. But who decides which ship to repair first? Who assigns priorities?" "We do, sir. We look at what's needed most. We talk about it. We decide together." "That's chaos," Jiwon smiled. "Maybe. But it works." Vothkar moved through the bay, watching the humans work. They communicated constantly, not through formal reports, but through casual conversation. They joked while they worked. They helped each other without being asked. When someone made a mistake, others corrected it without anger. It was everything he had been trained to believe was wrong. And yet the repairs were excellent. The work was fast. The morale was high. He found Daehyun in the tactical center next. "You're coordinating intelligence," Vothkar said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir." "You have no formal training for this." "I was a teacher, sir. I'm good at gathering information and explaining it to others." "That's not the same as military intelligence." Daehyun met his eyes. "Respectfully, sir. Isn't all teaching just intelligence work? You observe, you analyze, you adapt to your audience." Vothkar had no answer to that. "We're not broken, General," Daehyun said quietly. "I know that's what you think, that without commanders, we should fall apart. But humans don't work that way. We never have." "Then how do you work?" Daehyun thought for a moment. "We rise when we're needed, not when we're told to. There's a difference." That night, Vothkar sat in his quarters, thinking about what he had seen. His military training said the humans should fail. Every tactical manual said soldiers needed clear hierarchy. Every species in the coalition operated that way, but the humans didn't. They operated on something else. Trust, maybe, or mutual respect, or simply the shared understanding that the work needed to be done, and it didn't matter who gave the order. Perhaps, Vothkar said to the empty room, humans aren't broken. Perhaps they were never meant to work like the rest of us. It was a disturbing thought. And it wouldn't leave him alone. The alert came at 0400 hours. Jiwan jerked awake in her bunk as the alarm screamed through the ship. Around her, 3,000 humans scrambled for their gear. No confusion, no panic. They had done this before. Supply depot at Cryo Station is under attack. Daehyun's voice came through the speakers. Massive swarm force. All hands to battle stations. Jiwan pulled on her gear and ran to the hangar bay. The fighters she had repaired over the past 2 weeks sat ready. Sora, a former delivery driver who had somehow become one of their best pilots, was already running pre-flight checks. Ready? Jiwan asked. Always, Sora grinned. Let's go make some scrap metal. On the command deck, General Vothkar studied the tactical display with growing concern. The swarm had committed over 200 ships to the attack on Krios Station. It was one of the coalition's critical supply points. If it fell, 3 sectors would be cut off from reinforcements. Deploy all available forces, he ordered. Sir, Tresh said carefully, our main fleet is scattered. The Kelrath battle group is 6 hours away. The Torvath are engaged in Sector 9. The only forces immediately available are the humans. Vothkar finished. His scaled hand tightened on the armrest. The leaderless battalion. The undisciplined chaos. Yes, sir. He had no choice. Deploy them. All of them. In the hangar bay, Jiwan watched as Sora and 30 other pilots launched into space. She wanted to go with them, but her skills were needed elsewhere. The station's shield generator was failing. Someone had to go down there and fix it. Under fire. I need volunteers, she called out. Dangerous work. Manual repair while the station is under attack. 20 hands went up immediately. Jiwan picked 5. They loaded into a transport shuttle without waiting for approval or orders. They had a job to do. Daehyun coordinated from the tactical center. But he wasn't giving orders. He was sharing information. Swarm fighters concentrating on the eastern shield array, he reported over the open channel. Station defense guns are at 40% capacity. Shield generator, in critical condition. Got it, Sora's voice came back. We'll draw them away from the eastern side. Negative. Another pilot named Minsok called. Better if we split. Half draw them off, half protect the station guns. Good idea, Sora agreed. You take the distraction group. I'll cover the guns. Vothkar listened to this exchange with disbelief. They were making tactical decisions in real time, without consulting him, without consulting anyone. Just pilots talking to each other, adjusting on the fly. This is unacceptable, he muttered. They need coordination. Central command. Central. Command. Sir, Tresh said, watching the battle display. They seemed to be doing well. It was true. The human pilots flew in loose formations, constantly adapting. When the swarm tried to predict their movements, they changed. When one pilot got in trouble, others covered them without being asked. They talked constantly, sharing information, warning each other, adjusting tactics. It looked like chaos, but it was working. On Krios Station, Jiwan and her team ran through corridors filled with smoke and flashing lights. Explosions rocked the structure every few seconds. The swarm was pounding the shields, trying to break through. Generator room ahead, said Hyunwoo, reading a datapad while running. They burst into the chamber to find a nightmare. The main shield generator was on fire. Cooling systems had failed. Power conduits sparked and hissed. This wasn't a simple repair. This was a complete rebuild. We don't have time for this, one of the volunteers said. Jiwan looked at the damage, her engineer's mind racing. Then we don't rebuild it. We bypass it. What? The backup generator in Section C. It's offline, but functional. We reroute power through the emergency grid. Skip the main system entirely. That's not rated for full shield capacity, Hyunwoo pointed out. Don't need full capacity. Just need enough to hold until the real fleet arrives. Jiwon was already moving. Pulling access panels. Tracing power lines. You three, go to Section C and bring the backup online. You two, help me reroute these conduits. They scattered without question. No debate. No committee. The situation was clear. The solution was reasonable. They executed. In space, Sora's fighters spun through a cloud of swarm drones. Her weapon systems lit them up, one after another. But there were too many. Always too many. I've got 6 on my tail, Minseok called. Coming around, Sora replied. But she was too far away. I got him, another voice. A pilot named Jae-ho swept in from above, scattering the drones. Thanks. No problem. Watch the left. Big one coming through. They worked together like parts of a single organism. No central brain giving orders. Each part aware of the whole, responding, adapting. When one pilot ran low on ammunition, they pulled back, and another took their place. When someone spotted a weakness in the swarm formation, they all exploited it together. Vothkar watched the battle with a mixture of frustration and awe. They're winning, he said in disbelief. Yes, sir, but they have no formation, no discipline. They're just talking to each other and making it up as they go. Yes, sir. On the station, Jiwon worked faster than she had ever worked in her life. Her hands moved on autopilot, connecting wires, rerouting power, bypassing burned systems. Sweat poured down her face. Another explosion shook the room, and she nearly dropped the plasma torch. Backup generator online, Hyunwoo reported through the comm. Good. Starting the power transfer now. She threw the switch. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then lights flickered. Systems hummed to life. The shield generators began spinning up. It's working, someone shouted. Shield strength increasing. Daehyun's voice came through from the ship. 20%. 30. Keep it going. Jiwon. Working on it, she grunted, making final adjustments. The shield strength hit 60% and stabilized. Not perfect, but enough. The station stopped shaking. The swarm weapons were deflecting off the renewed defenses. Mirai's voice cut into the comm channel. I'm at the station medical center. Lot of wounded here. Setting up triage. You weren't assigned to the station, Vothkar said, speaking for the first time. No, sir, but they need medics, so here I am. Of course she was. That was the human way. See a need. Fill it. Don't wait for orders. The battle lasted 16 hours. 16 hours of constant fighting, constant adaptation, constant problem-solving. The human pilots rotated out when they needed rest, coordinating among themselves. The engineering teams kept the station running. The medical teams treated wounded from half a dozen species, and they did it all without a single commander telling them what to do. When the Kelrath battle group finally arrived, the fight was nearly over. The swarm was retreating, their attack broken against the stubborn defense. In the aftermath, Jiwon sat on the floor of the generator room, too exhausted to stand. Her hands shook from adrenaline and fatigue. Around her, the makeshift repair job sparked and hummed. But it held. Good work, engineer, a deep voice said. She looked up to see General Vothkar standing in the doorway. His reptilian face was hard to read, but his posture seemed different. Less rigid. Thank you, sir. Who ordered you to come to the station? Nobody, sir. It needed to be done. And if you had failed? If you had died? Jiwon thought about that. Then someone else would have tried. That's what humans do. We keep trying until it works, or we can't try anymore. Vothkar was silent for a long moment. I watched your people fight today. I watched them make decisions without permission, break protocols without hesitation. Operate without leadership. Yes, sir. And I watched them win. Against impossible odds. I watched them win. Jiwan smiled tiredly. We're good at impossible, sir. It's kind of our thing. Z1. 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 The general made a sound that might have been a laugh. Or maybe just acknowledgement. Your people are strange, engineer. But perhaps that is not a weakness. No, sir, I don't think it is. Later, on the journey back to the Eternal Dominion, Vothkar stood alone on the observation deck, watching the stars. He thought about what he had seen. Humans working together, without hierarchy, making decisions through discussion instead of orders. Succeeding, where his training said they should fail. Every military manual he had studied said that soldiers needed commanders. That order came from the top down. That discipline required structure. But the humans proved otherwise. They had structure, just not the kind he recognized. Their discipline came from within, not from above. Their order emerged from chaos through cooperation and trust. Perhaps, he said to himself, we have been doing this wrong for a very long time. It was a dangerous thought for a general to have. But watching the human transport dock, filled with exhausted but victorious soldiers who had saved a station without being told to, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he knew about military command might need to change. The humans weren't broken. They never had been. They were just different. And different, Vothkar was beginning to understand, might be exactly what the coalition needed. General Vothkar had not slept well in 3 days. He kept thinking about the battle at Krios Station, about the humans who won without commanders, about everything he thought he knew being wrong. He sat now in his private office, reviewing the human section's activity reports. They were incredible. In 3 weeks without formal leadership, the humans had increased efficiency by 38%. They had repaired more equipment, treated more wounded, and provided better tactical analysis than when they had a full command structure. It made no sense. It defied everything he had learned at the military academy. It contradicted every manual ever written, and yet it was true. Sir. Tresh entered without knocking. The humans have requested a meeting with you. Vothkar looked up. A meeting? Who is their spokesman? They don't have one, sir. Several of them wish to speak with you. The engineer Jiwan. The teacher Daehyun. The medic Mireille. A food services worker named Hyun Woo. A chef wants to speak with me about military matters? Apparently, sir. Vothkar almost refused. But curiosity won. Send them in. The 4 humans entered his office. They looked tired but determined. Jiwan carried a datapad. Daehyun held nothing, his hands clasped behind his back in a way that reminded Vothkar of teachers everywhere. Mireille had paint under her fingernails again. Hyunwoo looked nervous but resolute. General, Daehyun spoke first. Thank you for seeing us. You wanted this meeting. Speak. We want to help, Jiwan said simply. Help with what? With the war. With the coalition. We've been watching how other species fight, how they operate, and we think we can make things better. Vothkar's scales rippled with irritation. You are soldiers. You follow orders. You do not question how the coalition operates. Respectfully, sir, Daehyun said. We're not just soldiers. We're humans. And questioning is what we do best. That is your weakness. Is it? Mireille asked quietly. We held Krios Station for 16 hours with no commanders. Is that weakness? Vothkar had no answer to that. Jiwan activated her datapad. We've been analyzing coalition battle tactics for the past month. May I show you something? Crete? She projected a hologram in the center of the room. It showed a typical coalition fleet engagement. Ships moved in precise formations, each species in their designated positions. The Kelrath on the front lines, the Torvath holding the flanks, the Minari providing support. This is how the coalition fights, Jiwan said. Rigid formations, fixed roles. Each species does what they're assigned to do, no more, no less. That is proper military doctrine, Vothkar said. It's also predictable, Daehyun added. The swarm has adapted to it. They know exactly how you'll respond to any situation. And you think you can do better? Vothkar's voice was sharp. Not better, sir. Different. Ji-won changed the hologram. It now showed the battle at Krios Station. The human fighters moving in fluid patterns. The constant adaptation. The organic flow of the fight. Look at how our pilots moved, she said. No fixed formation. When the swarm tried to predict their movements, there was nothing to predict. Because the humans were constantly changing. Vothkar studied the display. He had seen this before, but now he saw it differently. The chaos had a pattern. Not a rigid pattern, but a flow. Like water finding the path of least resistance. Your way works for small engagements, he said. But for fleet actions? For coordinating thousands of ships? Impossible. Is it? Hyunwoo spoke for the first time. Everyone looked at him in surprise. He swallowed nervously but continued. Sir, I ran a restaurant on Earth. During busy nights, I had 30 people in the kitchen. If I tried to control everything, tell everyone exactly what to do every second, we'd fail. But if I trained them well and trusted them to do their jobs, they worked like magic. Each person aware of what others were doing. Adapting. Helping. A kitchen is not a battlefield, Vothkar said. Isn't it? Hyunwoo asked. High pressure. Split-second decisions. Many moving parts that must work together. The principle is the same. Trust your people to think for themselves. Daehyun stepped forward. General, I taught school for 15 years. I learned something important about how people learn and grow. You can't force understanding. You can't order someone to be creative or adaptable. You have to give them the freedom to think for themselves. That leads to chaos. Or it leads to innovation, Mireille said. On Earth, humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When we're free to solve problems our own way, we find solutions nobody else would think of. Vothkar stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. My people, the Vorthani, have been warriors for 10,000 years. We conquered our planet through discipline and hierarchy. Every soldier, knowing their place. Every commander obeyed without question. This is how civilized species operate. Maybe, Ji-won said carefully, but humans aren't civilized that way. We're civilized differently. He turned to face them. Explain, Daehyun thought for a moment. On Earth, we have thousands of years of history. Empires rose and fell. Kings and emperors tried to control everything. And you know what always happened? They failed. The empires that lasted longest were the ones that gave their people freedom, the right to think, to choose, to question. We had rebellions, Mireille added. Revolutions. Ordinary people who stood up and said, no, to kings and dictators. Our whole culture is built on the idea that no one person has all the answers, that the best solutions come from many voices, not one. That's why we tell stories, Hyunwoo said, gaining confidence. Stories about farmers who became heroes, about children who outwitted giants, about underdogs who won against impossible odds. We celebrate the individual who makes a difference. Vothkar listened to this, his mind working. But in war, individual action is dangerous. A soldier who disobeys could get everyone killed. There's a difference between disobedience and initiative, Daehyun said. We're not talking about ignoring orders. We're talking about trusting soldiers to execute the mission in the best way they see fit. Ji-won pulled up another hologram. Look at this, sir. This is a swarm attack pattern from last month. The coalition responded with standard defensive formation. Beta 7. The swarm adapted in real time and broke through. 23 coalition ships destroyed. She changed the image. This is a similar attack from 2 weeks ago. The humans didn't use standard formations. We adapted just as fast as the swarm did. Result? 3 human fighters damaged, none destroyed. The station held. The numbers didn't lie. Vothkar stared at the data. What you're suggesting, he said slowly, would require me to completely change how I command. How the entire coalition commands. Not completely, Daehyun said. You still give the mission, the objective, but you let your soldiers figure out how to achieve it. And if they fail, then they fail trying their best, Mireille said. But at least they tried something new, instead of following a playbook the enemy has already memorized. Vothkar was silent for a long time. He thought about his training, about his culture, about 10,000 years of Vorthani military tradition. Then he thought about 3,000 humans who won a battle without commanders. I need time to think about this, he said finally. The humans nodded and turned to leave. Wait, Vothkar called. They stopped. The battle at Krios Station. You held for 16 hours. How? Daehyun smiled. We trusted each other, sir. Every single person knew that everyone else would do their part. Not because they were ordered to, but because that's what humans do. We rise when we're needed. After they left, Vothkar sat alone in his office for hours. He called up historical records. Human military history. The battles they had won. The wars they had survived. And he saw a pattern. Throughout human history, the times they succeeded were often the times they broke the rules. When individual soldiers made impossible choices. When ordinary people did extraordinary things. The Americans holding Bastogne. The British at Dunkirk. The Russians at Stalingrad. The Koreans at the Nakdong River. Every major human military victory had stories of small units acting independently. Of soldiers making decisions their commanders never planned for. It was built into them. This need to think for themselves. This refusal to be just cogs in a machine. Tresh, he called. His aide appeared immediately. Sir, I want you to arrange something. A training exercise. Mixed units. Humans and Kelrath, working together. Sir, the Kelrath will not respond well to human methods. I know. That's why we're going to try it. If the humans can teach our people to think for themselves while maintaining discipline, we might have something valuable. Everyone. We might have something valuable. Tresh looked uncertain but nodded. As you command, sir. One more thing. Promote Daehyun, Jiwon, and Mireille. Not to commanders. To advisors. I want them helping reshape our tactical doctrine. Sir. This is highly irregular. So are humans, Vothkar said. But they held a station for 16 hours, when they shouldn't have lasted 16 minutes. If that's what irregular gets us, I want more of it. He looked back at the window, at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was preparing for their next attack. The coalition needed every advantage they could get. Maybe the humans, with their chaos and questions and stubborn independence, were exactly the advantage they needed. I thought they were broken, Vothkar said quietly. But they were never broken. They were just waiting to break the mold. 6 months had passed since the battle at Krios Station. The Eternal Dominion looked different now. In the training rooms, human soldiers taught Kelrath warriors how to think flexibly. In the engineering bays, mixed crews worked together, combining alien precision with human creativity. In the command centers, officers from a dozen species sat in circles, discussing, rather than just receiving orders. The change had been slow, painful at times. The Kelrath had struggled the most, their culture built on absolute obedience. The Torvath had resisted, viewing the human methods as undisciplined. The Minari had been cautious, worried about losing their traditional ways. But gradually, impossibly, it was working. Jiwon stood in a briefing room with a mixed engineering team. 3 humans, 2 Kelrath, and a Torvath engineer named Grath. who towered over everyone. "The power relay is damaged," Grath said, his deep voice rumbling. "Standard procedure is to replace it entirely. 6 hours, minimum." "Or," said one of the Kelrath, a warrior named Vesh who had been learning human methods, "we could bypass the damaged section and reroute through the secondary grid." Jiwan smiled. 3 months ago, Vesh would never have suggested an alternative. Kelrath didn't question procedures. But now, he did. "That could work," she said. "But the secondary grid isn't rated for full power. Then we don't run full power," another human suggested. "We run at 70% until we can do the full replacement." "That's against regulations," Grath rumbled. But then he paused. "However, it is also practical. We should do it." The team moved as one. No formal chain of command. Just engineers solving a problem together. In the tactical center, Daehyun worked alongside a Minari officer named Pix. The small alien had been skeptical of human methods at first, but now they shared the tactical station comfortably. "Swarm scouts in Sector 20, Pix reported. 3 vessels. Standard reconnaissance pattern." "Agreed," Daehyun said, studying the display. "But look at the timing. They're arriving exactly 4 hours after the previous patrol. So they're being predictable. Which means either they don't know we can see them, or they want us to see them." Pix's large eyes blinked. "A distraction? Maybe. Let's look at other sectors." Daehyun pulled up a wider view. "There. Sector 18. Unusual energy readings. Should we report this to command?" "Already doing it," Daehyun said, sending the analysis. "But we should also prepare recommendations." "We're not commanders," Pix said, but without conviction. They had been having this same conversation for months, and each time Pix sounded less certain. "No," Daehyun agreed. "But we're the ones looking at the data. We see things commanders might miss. Our job is to give them the best information possible." In the medical bay, Mireille supervised a mixed team of human and alien medics. They were developing new treatment protocols that combined human adaptability with alien medical knowledge. "The Kelrath physiology doesn't respond well to our standard pain medication," Unji reported. "Have you tried adjusting the dosage?" Mireille asked. "Yes. Doesn't help. Different biology." A Kelrath medic named Rosh, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Perhaps combine your medication with our traditional healing stimulant. Together, they might be more effective than separately." "That's brilliant," Mireille said. "Let's test it." Rosh's scaled face showed surprise. In Kelrath culture, subordinates didn't make suggestions. But here, everyone's ideas mattered. On the command deck, General Vothkar reviewed reports with satisfaction. The efficiency improvements across the entire coalition force were remarkable. Battle losses were down. Mission success rates were up. Morale had increased significantly. And it was all because he had learned to let his people think for themselves. "Sir," Tresh said, "long-range sensors have detected a massive swarm fleet. Heading this way." Vothkar's satisfaction vanished. He studied the display. Over 500 swarm vessels. The largest force they had seen in years. And they were heading straight for the coalition's main supply line. "It's the mothership," Tresh breathed. "They're committing their mothership." The swarm mothership was a legend. A vessel so large it could carry entire fleets. So powerful it could destroy planets. The coalition had never faced it directly. "Send out the call," Vothkar ordered. "All coalition forces to rally at the nexus point. We make our stand there." The Eternal Dominion became a hive of activity. But it was organized chaos now. People moved with purpose, communicating, coordinating, but not waiting for orders for every small decision. G1's engineering teams prepared the fighters without being told. Daehyun's tactical group analyzed swarm attack patterns and distributed the information freely. Mireille's medical team set up triage stations and prepared for casualties. And they did it all together. Humans, Kelrath, Torvath, Minari. Working as one. The coalition fleet gathered at the nexus point. Over 300 ships from a dozen species. It was an impressive sight. But everyone knew it might not be enough. The swarm had numbers. They always had numbers. Vothkar stood on the command deck, Daehyun beside him. The human advisor had become his right hand over the past months. They'll come in waves, Daehyun said, studying the projected battle space. Testing our defenses. Looking for weaknesses. Agreed. Standard swarm tactics. So we don't give them standard responses. Vothkar's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. What do you suggest? Wah. We split the fleet into autonomous task groups. Each one free to respond to threats as they see fit. No fixed formations. No predictable patterns. It was madness. It violated every principle of fleet command. And it might just work. Do it, Vothkar said. The order went out. Or rather, the suggestion went out. Because that's how things worked now. The coalition commanders received the tactical framework. Then they decided how best to implement it with their own forces. The swarm arrived like a dark tide. Hundreds of black ships, moving in perfect synchronization. And at their center, the mothership. A massive vessel that dwarfed everything else in space. Engaging, Sora's voice came through the comm. She led a mixed fighter squadron now. Humans, Minari, even a few brave Kelrath who had learned to fly with flexibility instead of rigid formations. The battle began. Jiwon watched from her station in engineering, monitoring the fighter systems. When Sora's squadron took damage, she coordinated repairs with Grath's team. No formal requests, just engineers talking to each other, solving problems in real time. Daehyun tracked the battle flow, feeding information to anyone who needed it. When he spotted a weakness in the swarm formation, he didn't wait for Vothkar to notice. He simply broadcast it to all ships. Whoever could exploit it would. Mireille treated wounded as they came in. Human, alien, it didn't matter. Life was life. When a Kelrath warrior tried to refuse treatment, she just started working anyway. He stopped protesting. The battle raged for hours. The swarm's predictable tactics met the coalition's unpredictable response. Where the swarm expected rigid formations, they found fluid adaptation. Where they anticipated standard maneuvers, they encountered creative solutions. But it still wasn't enough. The swarm had too many ships. The mothership was too powerful. Slowly, inevitably, the coalition began to lose ground. We need to target the mothership directly, Daehyun said. Cut off the head. Its shields are too strong, Vothkar replied. We'd need to concentrate all our firepower, which would leave our flanks exposed. Then we don't concentrate all our firepower. We concentrate just enough to crack their shields, while maintaining flexible defense. That's a calculation nightmare. The timing would have to be perfect. So let's figure it out together. Vothkar looked at his human advisor. 6 months ago, he would have dismissed this as impossible. Too many variables. Too much coordination required without direct control. But now he trusted his people to make it work. Send out the tactical parameters, Vothkar ordered. All ships have autonomy to execute as they see fit. The message went out. And something remarkable happened. Every ship in the coalition fleet received the mission. Every captain understood the objective. And every single one of them started coordinating with nearby vessels, figuring out their role without being told. The human pilots would draw the swarm defenders. The Kelrath heavy cruisers would focus fire on the shield generators. The Torvath would guard the flanks. The Minari would provide electronic warfare support. Not because anyone ordered it, but because it made sense. Because each group knew what they did best and trusted others to do the same. Jiwon's hands flew across her console, rerouting power to weapons systems across half the fleet. She wasn't following a procedure. She was improvising, adapting, doing whatever each ship needed in the moment. Mireille coordinated with medics on other ships, preparing for the wounded who would come. She set up triage priorities, not by rank or species, but by who could return to duty fastest. Sora's fighter squadron danced through the swarm defenses, drawing fire away from the heavy cruisers. When her wingmate took damage, another pilot seamlessly took their place. No commands, just awareness and trust. The coalition forces moved like a living thing. One massive organism with hundreds of minds, all working toward the same goal. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was completely unlike anything the swarm had encountered. The mothership's shields began to fail. All ships, final push, Vothkar ordered. The coalition fleet poured everything into the attack. Weapons firing in coordinated bursts. Fighters screening the capital ships. Support vessels covering retreats and advancing as needed. The mothership's shields shattered. The massive vessel, so used to being invincible, suddenly found itself vulnerable, and the coalition didn't hesitate. The mothership died in a flash of light that outshone the local sun. The remaining swarm forces, suddenly without coordination, broke apart. Some fled. Others fought on, but without the unified tactics that made them so dangerous. The battle was won. In the aftermath, Jiwan sat in the engineering bay, exhausted. Around her, humans and aliens worked together to repair the damage. No separation. No hierarchy beyond expertise. Just people helping people. Daehyun found Vothkar on the observation deck, staring out at the debris field where the mothership had been. "We won," the human said simply. "Yes. Because of what your people taught us." "No, sir. Because everyone learned." "Humans. Kelrath. Torvath. Minari. We all changed together." Vothkar nodded slowly. "When I first met you, I thought humans were broken. Undisciplined. Unable to function without proper command. And now I understand. You were never broken. You were just different. And that difference saved us all." Later, as the coalition fleet regrouped and began the journey home, Vothkar gathered his senior staff. "Humans and aliens, together. Today we proved something important," he said. "We proved that there's more than one way to fight. More than one way to lead. More than one way to win." Jiwan smiled. Mireille nodded. Daehyun simply looked proud. "The swarm will come again," Vothkar continued. "But now we know how to face them. Not with rigid hierarchy. Not with blind obedience. But with trust. With flexibility. With the courage to let our people think for themselves." He looked at the humans in the room. "You didn't just join our war. You changed who we are. You showed us that strength doesn't come from control. It comes from freedom. The freedom to think, to choose, to rise when needed, not when ordered. That's what humans do," Jiwan said quietly. "We rise. And now," Vothkar replied, "it's what we all do. Together." The meeting ended. The mixed crews returned to their duties. The fleet sailed on through the stars, and for the first time in the long war against the swarm, the coalition forces moved not as separate species following orders, but as one united force, each person empowered to make a difference. The alien general had thought humans were broken, but they had shown him the truth. They weren't broken. They were just free. And freedom, it turned out, was the most powerful weapon in the universe. The war would continue. Challenges would come, but the coalition had changed forever. Because sometimes, the greatest victories don't come from perfect commands, but from perfect trust. And trust was something humans had been teaching the galaxy all along, one small choice at a time. They rose not when ordered, but when needed. And in teaching others to do the same, they had transformed the entire galaxy.